All right. Yes. Thursday night football, week 2. We got Buffalo going against Miami. Two teams coming into this 1-0, Seth and Steve. I want to kick it to you, Seth, real quick, because I was a little I was a little surprised with the performance of Miami specifically.
Mm,
I thought Buffalo kind of tale of two halves for them. They came
yeah.
out really sluggish, had, lost the time of battle, or excuse me, lost the time of possession battle first half, but then really kind of overpowered a weaker Arizona team, frankly. But yeah, this one should be a good, fun interdivisional matchup. So our model says this is -2 in favor of the Bills. This opened at +1.5, actually. So let me get your thoughts on this matchup and where some value might be.
Yeah, and I think you were spot on. Coming into the season, a lot of questions on both of these teams. To be honest, week one, the EPA based stats, Buffalo actually ended up being the second most efficient offense, with the second ranked EPA on offense. But then Miami, interestingly enough, was the 15th ranked overall offensive EPA. And then for me, defensively, I think is where we had a lot of questions for both these teams. And I don't know that we got them got any more answers. Miami ended up being the 13th best defense in week one and Buffalo the 20th. And they had kind of similar games where they had to come back. They were kind of shaky. And, in the second half is where they, won the game. Unfortunately or fortunately, depending on where you're at in this, I think the numbers over the last 15 game sample show a bit of a different story. And that's a lot of what drives our model is a more smooth out sample and not just looking at one game, especially at this point in the season, but looking at an aggregate of who these teams are over a larger sample. And in that sample, Buffalo is really kind of the better bet in my opinion and in the model's opinion. I think this is now moved up to 2, and I think I saw 2.5s a bit.
There's two and a
Um,
halfs out there almost across the
Yeah.
board that I was
wow.
seeing
Okay.
earlier before we
Yeah.
recorded.
So I mean, we're fairly early in the week still, sitting here at Tuesday. I'm curious to see where this actually closes. Do we see buying at the 2.5s? Is this an attempt to try to get to +3s? Um, I think if you get to 3, you have to take the Bills. It has to be a bet. Divisional matchup, like you said. This is in Miami, I believe. Which they kind of have some weather advantage there as far as putting their opponent in the sun. I think that's maybe one of the underrated advantages there. But yeah, I don't know. My question I wrote here in my notes: who are these teams defensively? I still don't think that we know. Both these teams basically lost a bunch of talent in the offseason, and I don't think we know yet what that's going to look like.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's pretty spot on. And for me, like this is your quintessential coin flip game, right? And I think you're kind of seeing that. You saw Dolphins open up at -1.5, get up to 2.5, back kind of go back and forth between 1.5 and 2.5. And again, like Seth mentioned, it's early in the week, but will we see that 3 coming in here for home field advantage? And I think one of the big things on my end about who these teams are. It's you look at the Buffalo Bills, and obviously they've lost Stephon Diggs. Gabe Davis is gone, but the receiving core, I mean, Josh Allen really kind of spread that ball around. I think 9 different receivers got a catch in their win over the Cardinals. So it definitely wasn't pretty to start with, but ultimately Buffalo did what Buffalo was supposed to do. And same thing for Miami, but you got to take into the fact, yeah, okay, you can say Jacksonville's a weaker opponent. Doesn't mean than the Cardinals are, but at the end of the day, they both got what they both got it done. For me, there's 2 things I'm looking at. One, I think we're pretty clear that Josh Allen is going to practice and going to play. There was some question with that left hand injury, non-throwing hand. When he got clear for practice, I think it's when you saw the initial bump back up to 1.5. But we'll see how that turns out. But then 2, on Miami side, what's going on with their running backs? Are Devin Achan and Raheem Mostert are both sidelined as of today again from practice. Mostert with a chest injury and HN with an ankle. So does this open up an opportunity for Jeff Wilson Jr. and how does that affect Tua's pass distribution? I mean, this is a Miami team that we think of going deep downfield with Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, but we look at their heat distribution of their pass map. A lot of it is kind of the dink and dunk. They're the quintessential bunt and home run team. They can hit you both ways. So I'm kind of curious how that's going to play out. But overall, I mean, I agree with Seth. These are 2 divisional opponents. This is too tight for it to be more than 3. And if
Yeah.
you see that 2.5, 2 or 3, I think you just have to take the points, no matter how you feel about it.
Yeah, because where we put the number, and then if to Seth's point, if it gets to the 3, that's definitely going to be value on the Bills at that point.
I guess
So
assuming not injury, right? You've made a lot
Sure.
of good points here.
To
Listen, it's
Allen?
like Josh. Yeah, if it's Josh Allen not playing, it'll definitely move through the 3.
Yeah.
And probably at that point,
Yeah.
I wouldn't bet it. I mean, you make a good point there, Steve. I wanted to, look at who these teams were in week 1, but I also wanted to understand who they were in that 15 game sample. And something, I didn't realize, because when we think of Miami, I think of this really, really potent offense, but on a per play basis, they were middle of the pack, 12th best offense for Miami last year, but Buffalo was the 5th best offense. So I still think that that's probably what we should expect. Like, there hasn't been a whole lot changed. And from week 1, we kind of saw these teams be who they kind of were last year, at least some semblance of that. So I gun to my head here, I want Buffalo. I like Buffalo. I even got not even gun to my head, just kind of wanting to bet it. I may just take action on Buffalo here, even at a 1.5. Like, it's not that crazy to me.
Yeah, and if you ask any Buffalo fan, I mean, if you ask any Buffalo fan who the best running back in the league, they're going to say Josh Allen. And that's the
Fair.
one constant you have. And we saw him
Mhm.
do that in week 1, right? I mean, this guy is pretty much unstoppable from the goal line. No push needed. Shots fired. But yeah, I'm with you, Seth. It'll be pretty interesting to see. And then keep an eye out for player props, right? Keep an eye out for Tyreek Hill over under a half a rest pre-game. You can get on FanDuel for plus 1,000. So.
Plus 1,000. Dang. Okay.
Value.
I-
Talk about value.
Yeah.
God bless.